welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be life as a reserve flight attendant and tips on what I did to survive my 7 months of reserve. Some people are on reserve for 5 years, some people are on reserve for 10 years, 20 years, depends on their company. I was only on reserve for 7 months with my company. I got off reserve really quick. I didn't have a full reserve line. I went from being on reserve to only being 3 days on reserve in first class. First, I just want to tell you, reserve is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I know some people will sugarcoat it, but it's hard. You're going to be away from your family. You're going to work holidays most of the time. You're going to work weekends, and you're going to work wherever they decide to send you. That's why it's hard, because you're always going to be away. And sometimes you're not going to work. Sometimes they're not going to use you. And that's okay. But most of the time, they're going to work you on those days. My recommendation is to get a crash pad once you get out of training, wherever they send you. So my class went straight to JFK, and most of my classmates got crash pads where we were based. Some people lived there. I lived in Jersey, so I drove from Jersey to JFK every day, and I have free parking pass. If you don't have a crash pad and you live wherever, it's kind of hard to figure out. Like, let's say you're on call from 3 to 3 and you need to get there the day before, you're going to be stuck at the airport. And it's only around like $250 to $300 a month. So yeah. And you're probably thinking, what is a crash pad? A crash pad is a home away from home. You are sharing a room with other flight attendants. So it could be 5 flight attendants, and the next room could be 5 pilots. So you are basically sharing a room. Now there are different types of crash pads. There's hot beds, there's cold beds. Hot beds you don't want to get because you're basically sharing the bed with another person. You're just switching out your sheets, but that's kind of gross. I wouldn't recommend that. Try to get a cold bed if you can, so you have your own bed when you're in that crash pad. Also, be prepared when you are on call. That I cannot stress enough, because when I was on reserve, I always came in flustered because I was rushing and I was trying to get everything done. What I mean by being prepared is have your luggage ready, have your uniform ironed and ready to go, have your uniform pieces like your scarf, your wristwatch, your badge, have it all together, so that way when they call you, just, put out everything on and go right out the door. And you also have to have your required items, so make sure they're readily accessible so you don't forget them, because if you forget them, they can't use you. Make sure you have your phone ready to go, have it on ring, and have a specific ringtone for crew services. So it's funny because a lot of my classmates had different ringtones for crew services. They had like Michael Myers, they had like funny ringtones, and they just put specific ringtones so they can remember when crew services is calling. And that's pretty important, because if you miss their call, you only have 15 minutes to call them back. And if you don't call them back within 15 minutes exactly, you'll get a no-show. And it's not good to get a no-show on probation, especially when you're first starting out. There's 2 types of reserves. There's home reserve and there's airport standby. Now, home reserve, you are basically home and waiting for them to call you. And you could be on call from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. For example, you can also be on call from 12 p.m. to midnight. That's home reserve. And then airport standby is you're just waiting at the airport for them to call you. Now, most of the time, they don't use you unless it's an emergency. They normally try to use home reserves first before they use airport standbys. But those are the 2 different types of reserves. This is something that I wish someone would have told me when I first started, was to drink a lot of water and moisturize, because your skin is so dehydrated. And I didn't realize how much flying dries your skin out, but it's so drying. I try to use masks as much as possible because my skin has become so dry ever since I became a flight attendant, but it's so dry. So make sure you moisturize and drink lots of water. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Pack for hot and cold. Always pack for hot and cold, because you never know where you're gonna go. One day, crew services can use you for Buffalo, and it's cold there. The next thing, they can use you for California, and it gets hot. So try to pack for different seasons, because you never know where you're going. especially on reserve. You don't build your schedule on reserve, you have only a reserve block. So it just says RSV on your schedule or whatever your company uses. So let's say Monday through Thursday, RSV, 1 day off, Saturday through Tuesday, RSV, and then 2 days off. So that's how your schedule is going to be built. The next thing is what I recommend, and this is something that I did, was I packed my food instead of eating out. Do not eat out when you're on reserve because you're not going to make money. You don't work sometimes, so it's hard to make money when you're on reserve. I went to Whole Foods or I went to ShopRite where in Jersey, so I can get some food that I can pack. I didn't eat out as much because imagine eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's $60 a day. For a 4-day trip, that's $240 for that 4-day trip. You don't have money like that on reserve unless, you know, you have a rich boyfriend or whatever. But you don't have money on reserve, so you want to pack your food as much as you can. Something that I did also was I stacked my days in the beginning of the month so I can pick up at the end of the month, so I was able to afford my bills. What I mean by stack my days is I put all my reserve days in the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month I picked up on my days off. And not a lot of people like to do that because when they have a day off, they want to relax and they didn't want to fly. But I wanted to work and make money, and I worked on my days off. So that's also a tip that I did. Having a good support system at home is so important. My boyfriend was so supportive. Whenever I didn't have enough to pay my bills, he would always help me. So being on reserve was so much better having my boyfriend around and having a good support system. It gets hard, and sometimes, some months you don't work and it's hard and you can't afford your bills sometimes. And a lot of people understand that. People think it's glamorous, people think you make so much money. But if you think about it and you're not working on reserve, you're not gonna make money. The only time you make money is when those doors close and you're in the air. That's when you make the money. Also, what I did was I applied for special assignments so I can get off reserve. Applying for first class wasn't really a special assignment, but it was a different base, and I was able to get off reserve. I didn't have a full reserve line. I knew where I was going most of the days, but I had 3 days of reserve a month, and that was it, which was amazing. I'll take 3 days better than a full month of reserve. There's also other assignments that you can do. You can do like HR or whatever, but there's so many different special assignments that you can do so you can get off reserve for a little bit. I know sometimes they require you to be there for a year, but depending on your company, just look into it. And also, I made friends while I was on reserve, and that's so important because if you can't get your days off, and the only way to switch your days off is with other reserve flight attendants, so try to make friends with other reserve flight attendants. That's pretty important. Don't quit. A lot of people give up right away. It's better. The longer you are with your company, the more senior you're gonna get and the better you can build your schedule. Just try to stick it out because it does get better. I've been off reserve for about 1 year, and actually it's almost gonna be 2 years that I'm off of reserve. In 3 months it will be 2 years I'm off reserve. But I've been almost off reserve for almost 2 years. Every now and then I work with the reserve flight attendant. I try to give back to them. I take them out to lunch. I buy them Starbucks. If you do have a line, try to give back to them because you're once on reserve and you know the struggle, what it was like to be on reserve. Try to give back because that helps them. They always appreciate it. I never tell them to pay me back. All I say was once you're off reserve, give back to other flight attendants because you were once a reserve. I want to tell you, do your research on the company you want to work for because reserve life is hard and you're on reserve longer in other companies and you're on reserve shorter in other companies, or you have reserve 1 month up you have a line. So it depends on what works for you. Try to look into it. Everyone starts off on reserve, so you want to do your research before you apply. That's pretty much my tips on what I did to survive my life as a reserve flight attendant. If you guys have any comments or you guys have any suggestions on what video I should do next, please leave them down below. I want to tell you guys have been so amazing subscribing to me and leaving such wonderful comments. You have no idea how good it makes me feel, and I just love giving back to you guys. And I hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and leave a suggestion down below what you want to see next. And I will see you guys in my next video. Ciao! I made reserves while I was on reserve. Okay, and right. So be prepared. Being prepared, what I mean by my class went from, my recommendation is to get a crash pad once you get out of train.